Before we start, I'd like to remind everyone to please submit your questions through the Brella app. This is so that we can make sure to cover every question throughout the session. So generative AI is arguably one of the most, if not the most hyped field within the wider AI field. So I'm very excited for this discussion. So to start us off, can I please ask you to introduce yourselves, and as a warm-up question, if you could say one thing that you are the most excited about when it comes to generative AI.
Thank you. Tim Mason, I'm at Deutsche Bank, run our innovation group. Briefly, what we take new technology and I guess turn it from seeds to saplings to trees to forest, try to get it across the organisation. I think generative AI has huge amounts of opportunities. Anybody who saw Microsoft Ignite last night and the kind of things they're doing is pretty impressive. And we're a Google shop, unashamedly on that. But I'm going to flip it slightly. The thing that I fear most is actually what it might do. And I've heard a lot of conversations about how we do generative AI in a way which can really give huge amounts of customer value, but it's managing the risk with it as well. So sorry, slightly negative there, sorry, but we'll talk about the good opportunities.
We'll come back to that.
I'll try and flip it and do the other side. So Ash Garner, so I know some of you actually from my old job, I ran generative AI for banking in Europe for Accenture, and then now just co-founded Tomorrow. So what am I excited about? Why did I start a company, I suppose, in that space is, this is like a fundamentally transformational technology in how every single person works on every single job. And I think, there is a lot of worry in the market, justifiable worry, around automating jobs away, which we should worry about. But there is actually a really positive kind of 10x human experience story buried in here that we just need to go find. So I'm really excited about building the solutions that make it great to work at a company as opposed to be automated out of a job.
Right, great. Nice seeing you all. My name is Dion Kraan and I work for M&G Investments. I'm the Director of Analytics. If you describe in one sentence what we do, it's building in-house all the analytics and insights that you can't get off the shelf. So the thing which really excites me about generative AI is the broad-based shift we're seeing towards more in-house capabilities. I think if you look at the rate of which data is accumulating in the world, the AI, how that's evolving, to really stay on top of that, you need in-house teams to really make some sense out of it. And in particular, the thing which I value the most about this is that from the top to the bottom, everyone is somehow interested and excited about this.
Hi everyone. I run complex client solutions groups for EMEA and State Street. I've been in this industry for 30 years. I've done pretty much most jobs from operations to risk management to investment management and trading. I guess I'm excited because there's so many in every one of those areas. There's use cases to using AI to improve that. And I guess at the moment I'm working mostly in private markets, which is a pretty inefficient industry still. So there's so much opportunity within the private market space. That's what I'm most excited about.
Great, thank you very much. So yeah, we established that Gen AI has a huge potential. So let's jump into some of the use cases. How can Gen AI and large language models be leveraged to enhance customer-facing use cases? So for instance, in what ways could Gen AI be used to contribute to improving customer experience, personalized experience, etc.?
Yeah, I'll take this one. So I think one of the terms of the year is hyper-personalisation. I'm sure everyone's heard the term hyper-personalisation. So probably about 18 months ago, and before everyone was talking about generative AI, I think we called it large language models at the time, quite frankly, we ended up doing a project with an Australian bank, actually, which said they had an amazing app. So they had a great app with a great kind of next best customer identifying algorithm. So used numerical AI to work out, is the best next thing a mortgage, is the best next thing a savings account, whatever, right? But the thing they did is they sent exactly the same message to every single person. So if Dion and I, the best next thing was a mortgage, Dion's buying his 7th house and I'm buying my first beach shack, we both get the same message. And what we ended up doing was actually building a large language model. We ended up building it as a prototype out of GPT-4 and then fine-tuning 3.5 for cost, but we can talk about that another time. To personalize those comms into really, really small segments built around how you spend your money, how you know, what's your personality, where you are in the world, but in a secure way where actually people could read that and go, that's something that's relevant to me. And we got like, I think about 150% uptake on the education content that this bank had to, you know, that was actually actively useful for customers. And it's like, that isn't, oh, I'm just going to put a chatbot on my website and back it with GPT-4, which is bloody dangerous, right? It's a considered use case on how to use this stuff and give people the information you already have in a really custom way to them. So that is one of a bazillion examples, but I think that one's a really exciting one that you can start off with straight out the gate.
Yep. So I'm going to talk about more as an end user rather than what we do at M&G, but I recently opened a Nutmeg account, well, recently, probably a year ago. And what I found is it's very one-dimensional in terms of how it kind of determines your personalization. So you fill in a couple of forms, you've got a couple of tick boxes, you get questions like, on a scale to 1 to 5, how important is sustainability? And that's kind of the end of it. And then lo and behold, a portfolio comes rolling out. And I think that's quite interesting if you're interested in very simplified processes like that. I think where large language models come back into play again is turning that into a two-way street. So a real conversation around, okay, so why do you find ESG important? Is it specific elements of it? Is it the environmental side of it? Do you want to do more with the carbon emission reduction, or do you want to have a positive tilt towards cleaning up the oceans? And I think that kind of conversational traits really put the personalization back into play again, and also to be going more in depth with it. So I find that that element currently missing with the current class of robo-advisors.
Great. Tim?
Yeah, just a few examples of what we're doing. I think if you look across what we're doing the last year, we've gathered something of 150 or more different use cases of what we can do with generative AI, building this into a pretty significant program for next year. Around the customer interface, there's huge amounts of things you can do in the way we can change the way customers interact with us. Everybody hates the rules-based chatbot. They want to phone customers. If we look at our retail bank in Germany, the ability to have generative chat, changing that conversation is two things for us. It's not just a better customer experience, but actually operationally, there is a cost reduction because you can make that operation a lot more efficient and get better customer experience, whether that be chat or voice. But that also applies to our corporate customers. We have 90 million emails coming in a year dealing with post-trade settlements, for example, where people have got to understand the email. What is it? It's complex. What's it saying? Language models' ability to understand those, make sense of them, structure responses and so on is a huge operational efficiency and happy customers. But we're also seeing opportunities, I think, in many other places. ESG was mentioned. Can we understand ESG ratings of housing? Because if we can do that and they're on a loan book, we can actually offer them green loans. And so there's uses all the way through. You'll see front-to-back process of language models. And some of the more interesting ones where they're not obvious, but actually there's lots of small uses all the way through of understanding pieces. I saw one today. If you just think about a chat process, customer asks a question, a language model says, can I understand your intent? Can I actually understand what it is? Can I understand it's a task? And all the way through a conversation, a bit of a language model is used, not just your big ask a language model. And we're even using it for things like entity extraction and resolution. Can we understand, is a customer a customer? So all the way through the stack, there's huge opportunities, I think, for what generative AI can do, certainly from our perspective to a bank.
Thanks. Andrew, do you have any customer-facing?
Yeah. I mean, I guess in State Street, obviously, we're a global company. We've got thousands of clients, and two of the key use cases at the moment. One is around, is a bit of a chat box, but we've developed models that clients can now interact with that and get information much quicker than it has been before, especially when they're the global clients that want to get their consolidated view across all of the things that we do for them. And the other one is really around data quality and data quality management, but also the reporting. So it enables them to provide, we're a service provider mainly, and it allows us to provide these types of interactive reports where they can actually provide oversight on what we're doing, right? And that's kind of quite interesting, quite powerful for a number of the clients we're using.
Great, yeah, very, very interesting customer-facing use cases. And then if we look at the other side of the coin, more internal use cases, what kind of projects have you seen in your organization that is focusing on cost reduction, improving capabilities, improving processes, etc.?
I covered a few of those, but let me cover, I guess, a few more. I think we can talk about AI as helping risk. We can talk about it for doing revenue. as a bank, we've been looking at very much from a productivity and a cost opportunity. Anywhere where content comes in the door that's highly unstructured, you can use a language model, whether it be an email, whether it be a document, whether it be a chat. That's an opportunity to really understand that content and solve downstream issues. In fraud, where you're dealing with things like screening, adverse media is a very big use case for most companies. What's being said about our clients, to understand that in a much more effective way is another kind of use case we're looking at. So we see them all the way through the stack of different types of use cases that you can go on, which can be really transformative to how a bank operates in terms of their operational processes end to end.
Anyone else on that?
Yeah, I'll add one. So to Tim's point, I think a lot of them come into how to handle the massive amount of unstructured data that all these, financial services firms have and turn that into something coherent. So one of the things we're working on at the moment with a partner is effectively building a co-pilot for equity analysts to help them understand just the sheer amounts of data they have access to across Twitter, across the news, across just macroeconomic data, and trying to organise that coherently into first of all, how do I ingest that into a coherent structure that I can actually ask sensible questions of? And you start combining AI with techniques and technology like knowledge graphs, which is probably where the really interesting kind of how do you stop hallucinations thing starts to get involved. Ask me about that later if you want. But actually then, how do you run that as a co-pilot to help make investment decisions and make more money, and manage the risk of your portfolio? And that those things are possible in live today in a controlled level of risk. And I think they're really interesting because as soon as you nail that problem, you've solved an awful lot of how to handle unstructured data and turn it into something coherent in your organization. So really powerful kind of use case to explore.
Amazing. Dion?
Well, we were talking a little bit about this before the panel, but I'm sure that you must have heard throughout the day that people are using it to build knowledge management systems, really taking a large language model, hook it into your digital estate, give it access to your databases, your document stores and the likes. I think for us, what is actually quite interesting is taking it to the next level after that. So what if the AI has brought you back all the data? You got all your holdings, all your positions, all your decisions that you've made in the past. Can you then use AI to further synthesize that data and make it, give it insights that you normally wouldn't be able to get? Now, I think the reality is, I'm going to say this, but the large language model isn't ready to consume huge volumes of data and trying to process that with machine learning. But I think where it gets interesting is if you then have other machine learning and other AI that you can bring to the mix, and I think a large language model can kind of operate other machinery around you, then it can get quite interesting.
It's probably two cases. One to pick up something that Ash said, just a kind of macro kind of models. We've got a group division called State Street Associates, which does a lot of research on macroeconomic factors driving returns, and we produce a lot of models. We produce a lot of models for that, which our clients use, and we've done, that group's done a large number of recent experiments using AI and overlaying AI incorporated into those models, and can show better kind of Sharpe ratios, better risk-adjusted returns using those models. So certainly in terms of, I can see the investment managers using this more and more to get better returns, which is going to get more assets into the company and make them more profitable. On the cost side, we've talked about this already, but there is so much. Again, if you think about, we've probably got 20,000 people in State Street that work in operations and kind of moving data and providing services on that. And it's really, it's leveraging AI to be able to do that. I think one of my concerns is more around making sure that the people in those roles are learning what AI, what's coming with AI, and being able to upskill their skills and services, because most of them are highly qualified people, highly qualified with lots of professional and academic qualifications, and it's important to not forget that as we move forward with all this technology enhancement.
Do you mind if I add something? I think Dion's point is really interesting of, people have this fallacy that large language models are really good search engines, and they're terrible search engines, awful, right? But what they're very good at is orchestrating other systems. And like, there are very few large language model use cases. There are lots and lots of AI use cases. And like, how do you get a large language model to orchestrate your predictive machine learning, or orchestrate your CRM and add a new entry, or query a knowledge base that you actually trust? Like, that is the mentality to put into your organization, as opposed to, oh, I've got this large language model silver bullet and we're going to fire it at lots of problems. And you know, that is a crucial thing to kind of help that literacy of use case come out within the business.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think the only thing is that if you look at it, probably 12 months back, we didn't think that this was possible either. So you don't know where it's going. It's going so rapidly fast. It's incredible to see. So I'm with you here, but who knows? Maybe in 12 months.
Yeah, great. And this idea of ensembling various types of AI and ML models is genuinely going to be a game changer. So throughout this past 10 minutes, we've touched on risks and concerns a lot. So how about we talk about specific challenges that your organization has raised, or you see what you foresee raising specifically around risk and challenges when it comes to Gen AI? Dion, would you like to start?
Yeah, sure. So irrespective of what we think of this technology, which I think is great, of course, we still need our end users to use this and adopt it. So adoption is still a thing. And for us, that means that in the front office, where most of the value add lies, people need to use it heavily. And kind of what we're seeing is that people are quite interested in it, but out of the box, ChatGPT, dropping it into an organization, that isn't going to lead to much. So what's much more interesting is kind of to build around it the user experience, and kind of make it fit for purpose for the organization that we are, and the way we are running our funds, and the way we kind of manage our people. And kind of aligned to that is you just can't do it with a large language model to kind of get everything working the way you want to work it. So again, you need to infuse it with some other algorithms, some other machine learning and the likes. And kind of very aligned to that is the consistency of the answers you get back isn't always great. And in particularly for answers or kind of for tasks that we deem to be super simple. Any person would do things correct 100 out of 100 times. So what we struggled with is, and maybe it's the wrong technology to try it with as well, is to have PDFs, load them in, there are tables in there with some financial metrics, get them out again, put them side by side, and put an aggregation at the bottom. It's shocking, the hit ratio we got with that. It's probably 90% wrong. So that isn't something that really helps adopting anything. So again, here we had to put some traditional machine learning around it, a little bit of OCR, and some classic engineering to just make that work a lot better. But to me, it's the adoption of it, making things fit for purpose for your organization, user experience, and consistency of answers is very important.
Tim?
Yeah, in terms of, I guess, risks to get it into the organisation, I think when we think about language models, you're absolutely right. The first thing I always think about is training people not to think about asking a question, but tell it to do something. So the first thing we're looking at is how we educate everybody in the organisation, starting at the top, to what language models can do and can't do so they can understand it. That then leads to the second one is, if you're using a language model and say in customer chat, can you get it to say something or do something it shouldn't do? The thing that I worry about is often, am I going to do some kind of prompt injection attack, tell it to say something that's inappropriate for what I want it to say as a bank, in a language or a tone? And that starts to then get into the question of, as an organisation, what tone do you want these things to say and to be and to use? And that's a very nuanced thing. One of the things we've been doing is getting it to create analyst reports. It's actually very, very good if you do it the right way with the right prompting. But then using another language model to test the answer for the first one to say, is that the right tone to get the thing? And you've really got to think through this. It's very, very easy to do generative AI, very easy to do chat systems. It's really easy to do it badly and have big risk. I think the last thing we worry about is cost. They're expensive. They look cheap to start with. But when you start to pay per token and you go up to GPT-4, it's not economic for a lot of use cases. So you've really got to think about how you scale it in the organisation and where you control risk and cost.
Especially, as you said, this idea of chaining multiple language models will quickly add to the cost, definitely.
Absolutely, yeah.
Ash?
Yeah, I mean, I think that was great. I've never seen a technology where building a prototype that looks really compelling is so far, far, far away from building something at scale that works. Like normally it's maybe 1 order of magnitude difference in difficulty. This is like 3, 4, 5 orders of magnitude in difficulty as you start thinking about how you actually trust this beyond 5 documents, when it worked really well when you showed your CEO. I worry about people really absorbing that lesson and the proliferation of bad prototypes that need controlling within organizations. I think the other thing I worry about, I don't really worry about the tech. Like, the tech is already way better than a lot of it than we can use in this room, and it gets better every day. I think I'm more worried about the strategy, the culture, the literacy of the people who are using it, and how do we help people have really prosperous, effective, enjoyable careers where this technology feels like they have superpowers, not that it's chasing them away from their own job. And they're kind of the 2 things that I focus on.
Just, yeah, I mean, same thing, not much to add on the kind of the cost that Tim mentioned, other than maybe that's going to be prohibitive for new entrants and competition. You know, if people are having to spend 30, 40 million, $50 million on building their models, I do get concerned about that. On the adoption point, I agree. I think that there's still certainly in our organisation at the moment, a bit of a detach between the business and the BAs and the technology group that are kind of really driving those efforts. So I think there needs to be more done on that. And then this is more just a general, industry-wide problem. I don't know whether I've heard it. I haven't been here all day today, but just around the energy consumption that this is using. I mean, crypto got battered for its energy uses and Bitcoin usage, but this just feels like it's on a different scale, and I don't hear many people talking about energy usage. I know that AI is going to probably improve industries to reduce their carbon footprint, but as you kind of train these models, I understand the energy that you use for these things is just insane, and I don't know who's talking about, if everyone in the audience knows more about that, but I think that's something that just doesn't get talked about so much.
That's a very good point. Maybe we're just all hoping that people looking after hardware will fix that. There's a question from the audience in relation to the challenges. Do you feel that with the widespread use of adoption, businesses will risk losing the human touch when it comes to customer-facing use cases?
I think when you use ChatGPT, it feels quite human in terms of it's very unstructured. It says random things all the time. Old AI was deeply unhuman because it turned everything into numbers. And this is actually a lot more human because it's basically the aggregate of everything we've all written on the internet, plus a few other bits, right? I think how you introduce your tone of voice, how you do that through kind of using it as best practice or fine-tuning your models and all that, technical jargon, actually, it can help make you much more human, I think. You just have to be used right. And if you just use it out the box, you'll sound like ChatGPT, and ChatGPT sounds really boring. So you kind of have to tune it to your position. But I think it's a good thing for that question, not a bad thing.
Anyone else on that?
Yeah, so look, hello? I've been in technology for a very long time, and the more stuff we've automated, I think the more emphasis we need to put on the relationships that you have around you. So particularly if you are constantly busy with very menial tasks, then they all disappear. You've got more time to actually talk to people about something meaningful rather than asking them for an update report. So I can see this as a way for people to be actually connecting better with each other again. So again, you don't need to have an advisor on the phone for the most simple questions. ChatGPT can help you with that. But if you have a real question or a real problem, that's where the advisor comes back in. And then you can get better personalized advice as well, hopefully.
I guess the point is, when does it replace our humanity or augment our humanity? I don't know. It's a bit existential question. I think for customer service, I think the experience will be much more human-like, exactly as you're saying. I think the question is, when do you swap to an agent? Everybody who's got big customer service organisations and people are asking questions, there's always a point you need the human involved to answer the more difficult ones. So it's understanding when you do that swap over. And I think you're always going to need humans involved, if I'm honest, in the whole conversation.
And what do you think are those skills that we as employees should develop to be able to better work alongside these generative AI or AI tools?
What skills did you say?
Skills, yeah.
Yes, skills.
Well, probably there does need to be that education and awareness, and people talked about this on a previous panel. I think that everyone knows on the planet knows what I've heard the word AI before, but how does it actually get used? And I think that there is a lot of skills to learn, right? And there's lots of new jobs going to be created off the back of it, and it's just bringing that awareness to people that aren't necessarily using it on a day-to-day basis.
Number one for us is not being data science. I have to say, if I look at the latest things like Duet AI and code generation and so on, it's going to make coding so easy for everybody that I'm not sure, if I'm very honest, is everybody going to be a coder in the future. But I think actually things like prompting right now is one of the hot topics right now. So how do you get a language model to do something in human language, I think is incredibly important. And educating people on what it can do and how it can do, use that. So if you were to, as an organization, release Microsoft Copilot to everybody and everybody's going to use it, it's relatively inexpensive, I think, for what you get. How do they get the best out of it? And so the biggest thing is about people's awareness and understanding of what they can actually do. Don't ask it a question, ask it to do something. And I think that's the big thing that, from an education perspective, the skills, how to maximize the usage of the tools, I think is for us, is where we're looking.
Yes, great. I also agree that I think people who will be very good at creating the right prompt will have the competitive advantage, definitely. So the next question would be, what does generative AI mean for the fintech ecosystem and startup ecosystem? Dion, would you like to start on this?
Yeah, sure. So on the premise of financial services using fintechs to kind of help accelerate the digital journey, so we can stay in that track, I think AI is just going to add more ammunition to actually partner up with fintechs. Again, it's very simple. They're usually a lot more nimble and more rapidly innovating than a financial services company would. We're talking about this before, so the development and dropping ChatGPT into the organization took about 6 weeks to develop, and then another 6 months to go through all the forums. So yeah, there's a different pace for fintechs to run with these new technologies. So what I'm hoping is for more partnerships on this. And I think we will see more partnerships, because I don't think all companies have the exact knowledge and or the skills in-house to do it themselves. The one thing which we've observed a couple of times in the past, and again, we are equally guilty to that, is you have to set some really strong expectations. We're a financial services company. We sit in hundreds of billions of pounds of client money. We're heavily regulated, so no, we can't forego compliance. And no, we can't break stuff either and then ask for forgiveness later. That's how you go out of business. And it's the same way with fintechs. So if you deploy fintechs and you use your archaic way of waterfall project management to deliver long projects, and you need to go forum after forum for decisions, then it's going to be an equal car crash. So it's really setting the expectations, how you can best leverage both sides, and just understanding what the boundaries are.
Great. Anyone else on that?
From a fintech perspective, we actively, like a lot of banks, look at the fintech market, see what we can leverage and use. I think what we think is going to happen is you're going to see huge amounts of fintechs come up with LLM-based solutions. Back to the point of foundational models, I think you were saying. I'm not sure I'm going to see fintechs go build their own models. I think they're going to end up using foundational models, and where they'll sit is that position of how do they chain a number together to do something that's relatively unique. The big thing we're seeing right now, though, is this pace of learning acceleration, or whoever you're going to talk to today is not the company tomorrow, because there's so much new stuff coming out. And we're also seeing a lot of the architecture around, say, chat becoming the same. So companies who thought they were unique, suddenly it's a RAG architecture, it's pretty standard, everybody's doing it. So it's that space right now as a fintech. I think, for us, it's picking and choosing those people we think are big bets, probably why we're working with Google, Microsoft, the big companies right now. But I think in a few years' time, you're going to see some emerge with some pretty unique offerings about how they combine these language models into some pretty interesting experiences.
Yeah, having been on that side of things, so I think the build versus buy argument, I think, is a kind of digital transformation world argument. I think it is too coarse to talk about what you're really doing here. There's like build, buy, tune. There's a lot of grey area between those terms now, and it becomes confusing to talk about it. I think, for me, the real moats, for want of a better expression here, are do you have data that a bunch of other people don't have, right? And do you really understand a customer workflow really, really well, right? So when I think about building something for equity analysts, that's because I have equity analysts. I know enough about that journey that I don't think Google are going to be able to come after that and take it within a year's time, right? Maybe they will. I think, but you really are, you'll never moat around an LLM because you can't compete with $10 billion, $20 billion getting thrown around every week. What you can compete on is your true knowledge of a market, which is everything in this room, and the unique data you have to apply those things. I think fintechs will continue to prosper with a new set of stuff to sell. A lot will die, a lot will be born, and it will kind of work through on that basis.
Great. I don't know, Andrew, if you have anything else on it. Okay. Another question from the audience. What is the future of generative AI? So if you look at the next 5 to 10 years, where do you see it go specifically related to financial services and fintechs?
Pass. I think 5 to 10 years is impossible.
Yeah.
That's
But
like
2
I think
years.
it's 2 years. I mean, more advanced model. I think so. If anyone saw we were at OpenAI Dev Day last Monday. I don't know if anyone kind of watched it and this sort of advent of agents. I think agent solutions or agentic solutions will become a massive feature in all of the businesses in front of me today. So what is an agent is effectively an intent-based solution as opposed to an instruction-based solution. So you say what you want it to achieve rather than how you expect it to do it. They will go everywhere across this room and across all your businesses. I think how they are controlled, where we leave the people, saying your USP is the fact that we still have humans in our call center, and even though they may perform worse, people still like ringing and talking to a human who's worse than a model, because I actually might like that. I think that's where you'll get interesting things come out. But this will have a hugely drastic impact because it will happen in China and the US, and then we will have to drastically move to catch up in Europe. So I do think it would be pretty bumpy for 2 years.
I kind of agree with that. It's the same topic we're looking at in terms of agents. 5 years, 10 years, you're going to have the generative bank. Somebody's going to start a new bank, and it's going to have everything, all the interactions, all generative AI. Somebody's going to do it at some point. It's not going to be Google. I don't think they're interested in financial services. I think that's where it's going to go. I think the big issue for banks right now, though, from a generative AI perspective, is if you don't adopt it, you're going to be behind. And I know there's banks sitting there and looking at it and saying, do we or don't we? But the problem is everybody's going to be doing it, right? It's going to allow research department to do 10 times the amount of reports out there, cover huge amounts more markets. If you don't, you'll be behind. So I think you're going to see it absolutely everywhere. The slight joke we have internally, though, is at what point do you have generative AI creating your emails for the next person who used generative AI to read them and summarize it and then respond back? And so we just have massive amounts of data, all created by generative AI, and we're just looking at the summary the whole time.
So on the back of that, if there is an organization who has done nothing in generative AI for now, where should they start? What would you recommend them first look at, first use cases, first thing?
Yeah, I mean, I would say start with just using the chat GPT and get an understanding of what a large language model does, or generative AI. We keep talking about large language models, but what it does, and educate yourself a little bit. You're already, 14 months behind now anyway, so the extra couple of months is going to make a big difference. So yeah, I would say get yourself familiar what it can do, what it can't do, and I think particularly what it can't do is interesting, not because you need to focus too much on it, but there's a tendency where we try to shoehorn everything in it, and you spend a lot of time and resources letting it do all the wrong things. So I think it's, just get yourself educated if you haven't started on it yet.
I think for me, start with the pain point you think it can solve, because it can do a lot of stuff, and you can POC and demo so the cows come home. But in any big organisation like banking, it's they're not going to believe it until they see it, quite frankly, right? So start with some pain points such as, we've been looking at, as I said, analyst reports or anti-fraud or ESG or customer interactions. Demo and pilot. It's safe to do that. Show people a capability, and educate is the biggest thing. So start at the top, and the more you can educate top down your board members about what it can do, the more you'll get drive from them to say, yeah, let's go and invest in that. I think there's opportunities across entire organisation landscape. So it's about picking and choosing the right one, which is really going to show real tangible value.
Yeah, I mean, I talk to a lot of businesses, and a few of them are always like, oh, we're waiting it out for it to settle. It's a fallacy. It will never settle, right? And also, it's not digital. And I think a lot of people don't understand, like, you know, when you're buying Salesforce CRM solution, you go, well, I buy it 3 years after that other person. I'm going to get all the mistakes they ironed out, and it's going to work better. And yeah, my organization won't be used to it, but we'll catch up in 6 months' time. It's completely the wrong mindset, right? The day you start is the day you start producing new data, which means you train your models better, which means your model gets better. Like, it starts an exponential curve. And like, you don't really need to pick the right technology now, because the right technology today won't be the right technology in 6 months' time. Like, you have to start and build that kind of organizational literacy and understanding. And because if you can manage the risk now, you'll stand a better chance of managing the risk in 3 years when it's even a bit more scary. And yeah, that's kind of the mantra I always say to people when I kind of present at boards is, you have to start in a kind of safe way, because if you don't start, you're just falling behind, and you're falling behind faster every day.
Yeah, exactly. And having that culture of curiosity and innovation, that is very important. Are there any questions in the audience? I see one hand there.
Me again. Andrew, I wanted to pick up on a question you flagged about energy usage. There is many companies have ESG targets. Is there some best practice report or sector report that compares the energy consumption of AI and the requirement for ring-fenced cloud data storage with the alternative of not having an AI solution, for example, for customer service, number one. Number two, in these days where we're sitting in this happy place and we're safe and secure, it doesn't look like Ukraine, it doesn't look like Gaza, but we're just a breath away from bombs. So what is the future in a security warlike environment for relying on an AI-run corporate world?
Okay. I think I threw out the question that I was asking the audience if they had some kind of data points on that. The second one, I'm not sure I can answer, but yeah, I mean, look, I saw a report. I was preparing for this meeting about a year ago that was kind of showing the AI usage, and it was 50, 60 times. That was 2022. 50 to 60 times the energy consumption that the automobile industry is using globally. And I don't know whether that's, I mean, that was from a fairly, reputable publication, which I can dig out and probably. So for me, it was just like, I looked at that one chart, and that just scared me, frankly. And, there's other reports that saying that, we are, in the next 10, 15 years, we're rapidly approaching the whole energy consumption in the world will get consumed by this. So I'm just surprised that there's not more discussion on this topic. But maybe there'll be AI to solve that problem. I don't know.
There was a good McKinsey report, not that I sell McKinsey, but there was a good McKinsey report on that. The issue was energy and water. And one of the biggest things is cooling for data centers. And some of the big companies in the US building data centers in local towns doing deals to say, can I have all your water? Leading to water shortages in those areas, which is why you're seeing data centers being built in Finland now, cooler place and so on. So I think it's a real, I actually do think it's a real issue. Global shortage of GPUs everywhere right now. If you try and get them 9-month lead time, if you're lucky, even longer otherwise. And even then, if you then go behind that with the cost of running these things from an energy perspective, is ChatGPT even economic? Every time you ask a question, it costs them money. They're not getting back what is being put into it. Yet for all of us, I think cost of tokens is actually quite expensive. They're going to have to get cheaper somewhere. So I don't know how it comes together. There's got to be a break in that. Certainly we're looking at data center efficiency. We look at, we've actually got an AI project actually looking at energy usage. We're looking at AI for building energy usage as well. How do we optimize that as well? So there's a number of things, certainly from a banking perspective, we're looking at, and we're concerned about it. It's one of the things that we're dealing with, talking to Google and saying, how can they be more green?
Yeah, and hopefully more companies will publish their ESG numbers as well. Any other questions? I think we have time for one more.
Hi, Julius from Monzo. Sounds like AI LLMs will drastically reduce the cost to serve for a certain segment of customers, say, highly tech-savvy, self-serve. And so this will probably make other segments like, elderly, vulnerable customers relatively less profitable to service. So it sounds like firms are likely to swing one way right now with, say, like the fully AI bank for a few years until we get to a point where that tech is no longer differentiated or like defensible moat, and then maybe it's back to the human touch being the competitive advantage for firms. What are your thoughts on this ebb and flow?
I can have a go at that one. One of the good examples of customer service with AI, so I don't know if everyone's heard of Octopus, an NG company. So Octopus, the first time you email them, it responds back with I'm not sure if it's 4 or 3.5 email, which kind of recognizes that you've got a problem and routes it to the right person. And they released a stat in the FT, it's a few months ago now, of like the customer feedback of that being a useful email skyrocketed after they did that, right? I think it comes back to my first point of there is I want to remove all cost from my bank mindset, which drives a lot of very interesting behaviors about what you do to your call center and how you take people out. I think having built quite a lot of these solutions and seen them scale, when you take all the humans away, the quality starts to dive because they kind of need feeding with not random data, but like new data that they didn't make up themselves. Otherwise, they start chasing their own tail. And I think actually, how do you have a really great call center where when someone speaks to a human, they get offered the best advice of the next person to talk to, or, oh, we just released an article that would be great to offer that person if you wanted. Like, there will be choices, and some banks will just go race to the bottom and take all the cost out. Some will go, actually, our best USP is going to be the fact that we give great service when people ring up. The market will decide which of those kind of win, I think, in the end. But all things are kind of possible that people are exploring today.
I'd just add that Deutsche Bank, German retail banking, we have a lot of aging customers. Germany's an aging population. You can't ignore the customer, you've got to serve them the best way. We've actually got 2 banking offerings, one's a digital bank, one's a more hands-on banking offering. Where we're looking at that is you'd go into the branch, in the branch, you help the agent. So using generative AI to help the agent there. And we're also looking at things like kiosks for people to go and talk to. And for a lot of the people who might not want to be typing and typing these things, can we actually give them a better experience? So will avatars ever take off and will they want to go and talk to them? Or can you have voice conversations is something we've been actively looking at for the right tonality in the right language. So I think you've actually got to use generative AI to serve the right customer, not think about it that goes, oh, it's an aging population, will I do this for the young cool kids?
Yes, and keeping the human in the loop, which could be the tagline of this today. Any other points, or should we close it on that one? Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate all your insights. I had a very, very good time. Thank you.